David is sent by his father to visit his three oldest brothers. We find their names in verse number 13. And the three eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his three sons that went to the battle were Eliab the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the three eldest followed Saul. So here we have the kingdom of Israel, and they're being oppressed by the Philistines. Saul is the first king of Israel. He was chosen because the people wanted a figurehead, and they chose a man who was head and shoulders above all the people. And God said, well, you don't want a man just because he looks like a king. And they said, well, everybody else has a king, and so we want a king. And God said, well, I'd like to be your king. And they said, no, we want a person that we can see, a person that we can touch. And so they anointed Saul as king, and God had warned them. He told them what would happen. They disregarded that. And now because of Saul's disobedience with Samuel, the kingdom has been taken from Saul. Although he's still the king, David has already been anointed to be the next king in Saul's stead. In the meantime, Saul is finishing out his reign, and they fight in the valley of Elah. So the Philistines come, and they are on one side of the valley of Elah, and a formidable army. And they have a champion. The Bible uses the word champion, and his name is Goliath. You know the account. The children of Israel are on the other side, and they're afraid. And now it's been 40 days. And every day Goliath comes out and he threatens them. And every day Goliath comes out and he gives a challenge. Give me a man. Let's fight one-on-one. Why fight our whole army together? Let's fight one man and one man. And if you beat us, then we'll be your servants. Well, that didn't happen, did it? If we beat you, then you'll be our servants. And the people were just paralyzed. David's father, Jesse, sends David to his brothers to bring them, and you can read it, it's right in the Bible, bread and cheese. I think that was the first pizza delivery. Didn't have pork on it, but they were Jewish. So bread and cheese, and he said, I want you to bring your brothers some bread and some cheese and some food. And so he takes care of his responsibility with the sheep, and he goes down to the battle, and when he gets there, Goliath just happens to come out, fee, fi, fo, fum, and he said, you know, somebody ought to do something about that guy. He's defying God. He's defying the armies of Israel. He's mocking God. And so he goes from person to person. He starts asking these questions. He said, why doesn't somebody, dispatch him? Why doesn't somebody knock his block off, right? Why doesn't somebody go fight him? And everybody's afraid of him. And so they tell him, what will happen to the man who fights Goliath and wins? Well, he'll be the king's son-in-law. He gave him his daughter to marry. He found out that wasn't a good deal. But he said, there'll be the king's son-in-law, and he'll be his father's house will be free in Israel, and all these wonderful things. So David is asking, and finally, word gets back to the king, to Saul. Hey, there's a young man here, Eliab's youngest brother named David, and he said he'll go fight Goliath, and we want you to meet him. And so they bring David to the tent of Saul, and there's Saul, and he's the guy actually who should be fighting Goliath. He's head and shoulders above all the people. He is the tallest one there, and he was the guy who was the leader, and so he should have been out there fighting Goliath, but he wasn't. And so now, as David stands before Saul, the king, when David stood before him, he had a message. His message was a message of hope. His message was a message of encouragement. David came to the king to bring the king a message of unselfish determination. Look at verse number 32. He came to bring King Saul a message of a great faith in a powerful God. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with the Philistine. He wasn't even a member of the army. He was a shepherd who came in the middle of the battle, and he saw something that needed to be done, and he said, you know what, don't worry about it. God will take care of it. I know who God is. I know what God can do. So he came to bring this message of hope. David knew who God was. David had seen what God had done, and David believed in what God could do. So David had a great faith in God. Who was he? A shepherd. Who was he? The least likely to succeed. Who was he? He wasn't even in the army. But he knew that God needed someone, anyone, to stand for him, someone to believe in him, and someone to go forward for him. Are you listening? David knew who God was. Look at verse 29. And David said, "What have I now done? Is there not a cause?" David said, I have something bigger than myself. I have something that's more important than David, and that is God. I have a cause that God needs to be magnified through my life, no matter what happens. Is there not a cause? He had something bigger than him. We find in verse 46, when he finally faces Goliath, he says to Goliath in verse 46, "This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth." And what was the reason for all that? He sums it up. That all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. David said, I'm going to defeat Goliath, not for David's sake. I'm going to defeat Goliath for God's sake. God needs somebody to fight for him. And David said, I will be that somebody. That all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Where is the man today? Where is the young man today? Where is the lady today? Where is the young lady today that will magnify the Lord through your life? You know, the devil has a lot of people today that broadcast him through their lives. There's no shortage of them. I mean, they're all over the place. They're very popular. They're hard to miss. But God needs somebody who will say, I will magnify God through my life. What's the first thing that happened? Look at verse 33. David stands before Saul, the king. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. The first thing that happens, David goes to see the king, and he brings the king a message of hope, and he brings the king a message of encouragement. And he said, King, look, you can stay in your tent. I'll go fight Goliath. You don't have to worry about it. God's going to win a victory. And the king discourages him with three things. He said, number one, thou art not able to go. Thou art but a youth, number two. And he is a man of war from his youth. Three things discouraging. You can't do it. You'll never make it. In the eyes of Saul, David didn't have what it would take. In the eyes of Saul, David was too young. In the eyes of Saul, David was too inexperienced. David, you never went to boot camp even. David, you haven't gone to military school. You haven't been to West Point. You haven't taken any courses of how to fight in the army. You don't know what you're doing. You're too young, you're too inexperienced, and you're too ordinary. Goliath has been a man of war from his youth. All you've been doing is following sheep around. You don't have what it takes. You're unimportant. You're too small. You're too weak. What was David doing? David was looking at God, not Goliath. David was looking at the Lord, not even Saul's discouraging words. You know, it would have been real easy for David to say, okay, I came to the battlefield and my brothers discouraged me. I came to the battlefield and their fellow soldiers discouraged me. I came to the battlefield and now the king who sits on the throne has discouraged me. I'm just going to go home. I can't do anything. I'm too young. I have no experience. I am too small. Goliath has everything. I've got nothing. Young people today face the same voices. Hey, you may be a parent, okay? And you may have to unravel this with your young person. And if not now, you will. You don't have what it takes. You're too young. You're too inexperienced. You're not important. You're weak. You don't have what it takes. Hey, you need to undo that message and tell your children, you know what? You do have what it takes. God put into you. God knew you before you were born. God ordained you before you were born. God made you for a purpose. God has a purpose for your life, and you need to fulfill that purpose, and you can with God's help. You don't want to do it by yourself, but with God's help, you are invincible. And so we find here that if God calls you to do something, Don't let even the king discourage you from doing it. David could have gotten discouraged. He could have said, well, that's it. I'm just going home. I'm just going to go home back in 10 sheep, and we never would have heard of David. He'd be an also ran. He'd be just a line entry somewhere in the Bible. If he had listened to what he was told, think for a minute. What if David had listened to Saul? What if David had believed Saul? How many people tonight sit on the sidelines, never doing anything for God because they believe the naysayers and because they believe the critics? You'll never turn out for God. You can't do anything for God. You don't have what it takes. God doesn't need what you have. Go do something else. You're not experienced enough. David was but a youth, yet God greatly used him. Let's look at the first thought. Number one, there were great differences. Well, I put it this way. There were giant differences between David and Goliath. There were giant differences between David and Goliath. Goliath stood in his human strength. Goliath was a formidable foe. He was almost 10 feet tall. Can you imagine that? David was a ruddy lad. He was a teenager. And here's this big 10-foot tall guy. He is a monster. His superior size, his experience, he's a man of war from his youth. I don't imagine that Goliath was a pretty looking guy. I don't imagine he was, had his hair kind of coiffed and had, just everything in place. I imagine he would look like a grizzly, guy who had the scars on him and his nose was probably broken. You ever see those guys? They box, right? Brother Mikey pointed out their ears are all like cauliflower, right? Like, he might look like cauliflower ears and a piece of broccoli for a nose, and it was probably broken a few times, and he had probably scars all over his face. Who knows? Maybe one eye was hanging out, and he's like, give me a man. I'm going to eat you like I've been eating people all my life. I'm going to destroy you, right? And he was just like a rough, tough guy. But what is he doing? He was depending on his human strength, his superior size, his experience. He had weapons. He had a sword. He had a spear, like a weaver's beam, like what you see down on one of these mill buildings, right? That holds up the whole entire piece of equipment. That was his spear. And he had a point on the end. And last guy he probably fought was named Bob. They called him Shish Kebab, right? Whoop, nailed him right there. And he said, I just got a whole trophy case full of guys just like you. Come over here. Matter of fact, he said, come over here. I'm going to feed you to the birds, boy. Right? He had weapons. He had 100 different ways he could kill you. He had armor. He had a coat of mail. He had greaves of brass. He had a helmet of brass. He was a force to be reckoned with. David had no armor. Goliath came to him in his own strength, in human strength. He had a reputation. Goliath, everybody knew that name. When you said the word Goliath, people probably started sweating. Goliath, oh, Goliath is coming. Where can I hide? Goliath is coming. Where can I run to? And so here's this man with a reputation. He was intimidating. He trusted in himself, and his nation trusted in him. All those Philistines back there at the lines, right? Goliath marches out. They're like, yeah, go Goliath. We got our money on Goliath, right? Goliath is going to win. Goliath, he's done this before. We've cleaned house before. He's gone out there and fought for us before. We believe in him. We trust him. He's our champion. He was the best of the best, humanly speaking. There were giant differences between David and Goliath. Goliath stood in human strength, his superior size, his experience, his weapons, his armor, his reputation. He trusted in himself. David stood in contrast in spiritual strength. He had faith in God. He had obedience. He had courage. Look at verse 37. David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. David said, it's not David who is 10 feet tall because I'm not. It's not David who has superior weapons because all I have is a sling and 5 smooth stones. It's not David who has an armament because he had nothing. It's not David who had a reputation. He didn't have a reputation. But he stood in faith in God, obedience and courage, and David knew it wasn't in him. David went to Goliath and he said, you know what, I'm not going to be the one who beats you. God's going to beat you. God's calling in logistics. He's calling in airstrikes on you. He's directing that rock that's going to hit you right between the eyes. He trusted the Lord, not himself. Look at verse 47. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. What's that? At least 3 times, right? At least 3 times. David said, it's not me, it's God. It's not me, it's the Lord. You can come to me with your brute force. You can come to me with your superior strength. You can come to me with you're an ace of the battlefield. And I'm a beginner. I'm a novice. I've never fought a man before. But God delivered a lion to me, and God delivered a bear, and God will deliver you. You know, there are 2 ways that we can go through life. Number 1, we can go through life and say, look at me. And a lot of people do. Probably most people do. Look at me. Look what I can do. Look what I have. Look at these accomplishments. Look at my track record. Look at me. Or we can go through life, look at God. Hey, look at God. I'm just a vessel, but look at God. I'm just a tool. Look at God. I'm just a simple, frail person, but God is great. Look at God. We can be proud and self-reliant, or we can be humble and obedient and trust the Lord. There were giant differences between Goliath and David. Goliath stood in human strength. David stood in spiritual strength. And that's where you win every time. Number 2, Saul gave David some discouraging words. He said, you can't win. Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. You know, instead of that, you think he would have opened up with, all right, kid, what's the plan? Let me hear it, right? He could have at least let him down easy, right? He could have said, well, he's 10 feet tall. You're 5'4". I don't know how tall he was, right? He's been doing this all his life. I mean, what do you think? You want to, like, tie his shoelaces together? What do you think you should do? You think you should, like, hit him in the ankle? How you going to trip him, right? I remember one time I was playing football, and there's this kid in my neighborhood. His name was Jerry Doobie. I mean, this kid was a menace. He was awful. I mean, he was like 3 grades ahead of everybody in the neighborhood, and he would beat us all up. And so somehow we played football, because I had the biggest yard in the neighborhood, so he came over to my yard, and we played football. And I remember my friend Greg, he said, listen, we're going to trip Jerry. I said, how are we going to do it? He's like 6'5", right? He said, here's what we're going to do. He said, you get down on your hands and knees behind him, and I'm going to push him. I said, awesome. I got down on my hands and knees behind him. He pushed him, and Jerry went, whoop, boom, right? Just like that. It was awesome. Then he chased us around the yard for a while. The bigger they come, the harder they fall. Amen? Don't try that at home. You could get hurt. Make sure you wear a helmet at all times, okay? Now, Saul could have said, listen, kid, I'm pulling for you. You might be able to pull it off. I mean, boy, it would be the comeback of the century, but you could do it. He didn't say that. He just said, the first thing out of his mouth, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. Then he doubles down, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. Why did Saul discourage David? You know why I think he discouraged David? Because he was discouraged himself. You know, people who are discouraged discourage other people. It's contagious. Saul wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be leading the army. He's supposed to be in the front of the battle. He's supposed to be the guy out there fighting, right? But he wasn't doing it. Look at verse 24. That whole attitude spread. It didn't just start there in the tent. The whole battlefield was permeated by it. Look at verse 24. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man that has come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. It shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. Everyone was afraid. That attitude spread. You know, young people hear this all the time. They have low expectations because people tell them, you can't serve God. They have low expectations because people tell them, you can't make a difference. They have low expectations because their abilities are diminished. You won't make it. I came here as a 25-year-old young man. A pastor that I greatly respect said to me, I sat in his office, and he said this, I've seen your kind before. You come to New England, you start a church, and you leave. And he said to me, we'll see how long you last. That was my first initial conversation. I was like, wow, that's a blessing. I stood up, straightened my suit, and walked underneath the door. I was feeling pretty low. We'll see how long you last. You know what? I think that man helped me. Because I realized, you know what? It's not me. It's going to have to be God. We'll see how long you last. Saul gave David some discouraging words. Young people are often compared to others. Goliath has so much more than you have. He's a man of war from his youth. You're judged by what others see, not by what God sees. God didn't see a height difference and say, I'm rooting for the big guy. God said, I see David who has a faith in me, and he's going to win. Young people with a desire in their heart don't need to be discouraged. They need to be encouraged. You can serve God. Hey, your children need to know, look, there's a whole world out here that needs Christ, and you can give Christ to the world. It's an incredible job, but look, everybody's a customer. Wow. People aren't saved. Well, good. Look, everybody's a prospect. All you have to do is go find somebody who's breathing, and they probably don't know Christ, and you can tell them about Christ. Amen? You could teach them the Word of God. They never heard it before. Wow. We live in this world that has a great need, and we have the answer. It's right here. Don't say, you're just a youth. You can't do it. No, you're just a youth. You got your whole life ahead of you. I'm jealous. Think about it. You're judged by what others see. David, you don't have it. Not by what God sees. God said you do have it. You know, David did not even get invited to his own coronation. Samuel tells Jesse, one of your boys is going to be king. Gather them all up. I'm coming over to the house. He brings his horn of oil. Eliab, God says, that's not him. Abinadab, that's not him. Shammah, that's not him. 4 more, right? Nope. Jesse, your boys are here. What? You guys going to have a baby or something? Something I don't know about? Oh, we got one more kid, David. He's up tending sheep, but he'll never be the king. Go get him. I'm not leaving till you go get him. And David comes. He's tending the sheep. They didn't even think he'd succeed. They didn't think he'd be the king. And God said to Samuel, that's the one right there. Anoint him. He's the king. You know, the world might not think, and, you know, even his own family didn't think. You're never going to make it. And God said, you are going to make it, because I'm going to help you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to guide you. Number 3. Why does God use people? Why does God use young people? Why did God use David? Because he had a heart for God. David had a heart for God. I want you to notice something David did. Look at verse 34. As David stands before Saul, and Saul discourages him in verse number 33, David speaks back to the king. Verse 34, and David said to Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and the uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing it defied the armies of the living God. Boy, you talk about a tough kid. He's out there tending sheep, and a lion comes, and he grabs the sheep and pulls it loose. The lion comes after him. He grabs him by his beard. Pow! He kills him. Bible doesn't say he used a sling. We don't know what he used. Doesn't tell us. A bear. A bear comes. See you later. I'm gone. I'm not sticking around. A bear comes. He grabs the lamb out of the bear's mouth. Boom! Slays the bear. Now he stands before Saul. Here's the thought. He fought his lions and his bears privately before facing Goliath publicly. The big battle that you and I face is not in the valley when everyone is watching. The big battle is on the hillside in the middle of the night, all alone. Why did David have a right to stand before Goliath? Because he stood before the bear and the lion. And God delivered them. And God said, if you can deliver a sheep from a bear and a sheep from a lion, I will use you to deliver a nation from a giant. The private battles are the one that give you the right to win the public battles. If you don't win the private battles, you'll never stand on the battlefield in public. If you can't take care of the things, those besetting sins in your own heart and your own life, and say no to those things, and say yes to God, God can't use you in a greater way. You've got to win the battle when no one is watching to earn the right to win over Goliath. What is the battle? The biggest battle we face is our thought life. The biggest battle we face is the privacy of our own mind. When we have a smile on our face and our eyes are looking around, and all of a sudden we have these thoughts in our mind and we don't chase them out. You'll never win for God if you don't win in the privacy of your mind. The chambers of your imagery, the Bible calls it. Your personal, private life. Why did David win against Goliath? He was faithful in small things. Then God used him in big things. He obeyed his father, although he was anointed king. You know, he was anointed king in chapter 16. Look at chapter 17, verse number 20. Chapter 17 and verse number 20. And David rose up early in the morning and left his sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. He came to the trench as the host was going forth to fight, and shouted for the battle. His father said, I want you to take bread and cheese to your brothers on the battlefield. You know what David could have said if he was like a young person of today? He could have said, wait a minute, do you know who I am? Excuse me, Dad. That is King David to you. I have been anointed king of Israel. Kiss my ring. Kiss my big toe, Dad. How about this? How about you go take the pizza and I sit in the recliner? How about that, Dad? He didn't have that attitude. He took care of the little things. His father commanded him. He was already anointed king. Chapter 16, check it out. He was going to sit on the throne for the next 40 years. His dad would be one of his subjects, but not today. He respected his dad. He loved his dad. He honored his dad. He obeyed his dad. And God said, you know, a young man like that, I can use him in a great way because he takes care of the small things. I'll use him for some big things. He took responsibility for the sheep. He said, okay, I'm going to go take these bread and cheese to my brothers, but I need to take care of these sheep. I can't just leave them out here. Another lion might come. Another bear might come. So he found a keeper, and he put him in charge of the sheep. You know, his brothers exploited that. Look at verse 28. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, I can just hear the tone of his voice. Can't you? Anybody have an older brother? Okay? You can just hear the tone of his voice. Maybe you're an older brother, right? With whom hast thou left those few sheep? Right? Kind of condescending, right? Kid, all you do is you take these stupid sheep out there, and you got a couple of them, and it's not even worth your time, and you're just wasting your time out there. Who'd you leave those dumb sheep with anyway? Who must have left those few sheep? In the wilderness. I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. That wasn't true at all, was it? He was faithful in small things, and God used him in big things. His brother wasn't a fan, but David would learn to lead a nation. You know, when David won a victory, God won a victory over Goliath that day. David went to the battle as a shepherd boy, tending sheep in the wilderness. Look at chapter 18, verse 7. When he returned, and the Philistines had been defeated, and Goliath was destroyed. Chapter 18, verse 7, and the women answered one another as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. David went as a shepherd boy. He returned leading the nation of Israel. Why? Because he didn't believe some discouraging news, and he said, you know what? God is able. He didn't believe the king when he tried to frustrate him. You're just a boy. You're a youth. You don't have what it takes. You're inexperienced. He's a man of war from his youth. He said, no, God can do it. And he came home leading a nation. Why? Because he had a cause. Because he took care of the little things. His brothers, kind of like Joseph's brothers, they mocked him. But God fulfilled every dream he had. How can we stay encouraged when facing Goliath in your life? How can we stay encouraged when facing something that's impossible, something that's insurmountable? Number one, remember what God has done for you in the past. Verse 37, David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me, future, out of the hand of this Philistine. Remember what God has done for you in the past. Has God done anything for you in the past? He sure has. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we get so caught up in the moment that we forget what God has done yesterday. We forget where we were, where God has brought us from. Remember what God's done for you in the past. You know, walk around and reminisce a little bit in your life. Walk around in your memory a little bit. Just spend some time in your head and say, where did I used to be? What did I used to have and not have? And what has God done for me? Man, it's incredible. And the same God that did that and brought me here is the same God that can bring me into tomorrow. Remember what God has done for you in the past. Number two, stay who God made you to be. That don't mean don't improve. But look at verse 38. So Saul says to David, verse 37, go, and the Lord be with thee. You know what he was saying? He said, here, kid, go fight that guy. I'll pray for you. I'll be back in the tent, all right? Let me know how it goes, all right? When you get killed out there, we'll come with the shop vac and we'll clean it up, okay? He said, go, and the Lord be with thee. God bless you, kid. Nice knowing you. And Saul armed David with his armor. And he put it, remember now, Saul was the tallest guy, right? He was the biggest guy. David was swimming in that armor. And he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. You know, he's in that coat of mail, he's in that armor, and Saul's the biggest guy, and David was just a kid, right? And he's probably walking like this, and the armor's not even moving, right? He's like, clomp, he gets to the edge of the armor, clomp. He probably puts that helmet on his head, and like, I can't see anything. Picks up that sword, drags it around. He says, I can't do this. Why? I have not proved these. These are yours, Saul. You should be proving these. I haven't proved these. Sometimes we get intimidated by what God's done for other people. And we try to wear someone else's armor. Look at verse 40. And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. He said, I haven't proven Saul's sword, but I have proven God. I haven't proven Saul's armor, but I have proven what God can do, and God can deliver Goliath into my hand. And so he took a sling. Don't wear someone else's armor. Look at verse 41. And the Philistine came and drew near unto David, and the man that bare his shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I am come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and will take thy head from thee. And I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, and all the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give it into our hands. Now look at the next verse. I love this verse. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. He didn't wait for trouble to come to him. He ran to it. Here's the point. Run toward your calling, not away from it. He said, you know what? This is what God called me to do. I'm here. I have a cause. I dropped myself in the middle of this battlefield because I was just obeying my father. My brothers don't want me to be here. My brothers are saying I'm here for the wrong reason. Saul doesn't believe in me. But God called me to do this. I am not going to run away from my calling. I am going to run to my calling. And he took it to him. He took it to Goliath, didn't he? And he whooped him. That's Southern for knocked his block off. He took that stone, boom, boom, right between the eyes. I have an old book in my library. It has a watercolor print. I'll find it someday. I'll bring it out here. It's a famous painting. Some guy painted. It's David walking in to see Saul with Goliath's head in his hand. He's chopped off his head with his own sword, and he's got this nappy head of hair, and he's got it in his hand, and the head is like giant, and he's walking around with that head. And he's got this trophy, right? And I mean, he did get to keep the sword, and he walks in there, and he's got this. You know, it's kind of gory. He's like dripping, right? And he's like, look, God gave me the giant, right? What did he do? He ran toward his calling, not away from it. Courage isn't having no fear. Courage is going forward by faith in spite of your fear. Here's the last point. Use what God has put in your hand. What has God put in your hand? It's 2025, right? Almost 2026. God's put something in your hand. Use it for his glory. David had a sling, he had a stone, and he had a surrendered heart. God wants to use what you already have. David didn't have to go get something. He had it. God already equipped him. An entire nation was saved. Why? Because one young man believed in God. One young man made a difference. God spared the whole nation for a long time.